keeping your pet safe during the winter. That's next on All for Animals.
Weather can be very dangerous for pets, just like it can be for us. Pets can get hypothermia, they can get frostbite. It takes a lot of calories also for dogs and cats to be out in the snow. De-icing chemicals on the street. There are just so many different topics that can be discussed when we think about cold weather.
So let's talk about hypothermia specifically. What can we do to prevent that in our pets?
The biggest thing is if you're outside with your dog or your cat is to keep them warm. Dogs, for example, you can put a sweater on them or a jacket. Dogs generally, most of them like to be bundled up against the cold weather. I think another important thing to think about is if it's too cold for you, with all our jackets and our parkas and everything else, it's definitely too cold for your pet.
Are there certain kinds of dogs that don't need a coat?
It really depends on the dogs. Dogs that come from cold climates, so Arctic breeds, Huskies, Malamutes, things like that, they often tolerate the cold very well. But little Chihuahuas or dogs with thin coats, Terriers, they often are very sensitive to the cold.
Now, what about these cold breed kind of dogs? A lot of times in summertime, folks will get them a haircut. What about in the winter?
In wintertime, you would definitely want to let their coat grow out as much as possible. I had a Malamute, and that's what I used to do for her in the colder weather. And then they love the snow. They love to run and play and do all those fun things.
You mentioned calories. Talk about that. Do we need to feed our pets more in the wintertime?
Sometimes we do. Just like when we're out in the snow, it takes a lot of calories to keep warm. So for dogs in particular that are very active outside, that are playing and running around, we might want to actually increase their food a little bit or give them some more treats to make sure that they have enough calories on board. That also helps to keep them warm.
What should you do if you see a dog being kept outside?
In some cases in New York, it can be a felony to keep your dog outside. There are a lot of different circumstances around keeping dogs outside, but if you're unsure, it is always better to call 311, speak to the police, and give them as much detail as possible. The address, how the dog looked, how the dog was being kept, because in some cases it is something that they will investigate.
Certain chemical substances that we use during the winter months can be toxic to pets. What are they, and what can we do to prevent a problem?
Well, there are a number of different substances that are used on the sidewalks. One is just straight up salt, which can be toxic to dogs if they eat it. It can also be very painful on their feet. Antifreeze or ethylene glycol is extremely poisonous to dogs and cats, compounded by the fact that it tastes sweet. Dogs and cats like to drink antifreeze. So if you have any ethylene glycol or antifreeze around, you have got to leave it locked up, well away from your pets. The third thing that can bother pets is some of the chemical de-icers that are put on sidewalks. It is very painful to dogs' paws. I think it feels like a chemical burn. Additionally, it's sharp, it's crystals, and that's just like having a constant rocker in your shoe with every step that you take.
So here we are in the ASPCA Adoption Center with our spokespuppy, Lance, who's going to help demonstrate paw protection. So I'm going to give this to you.
Awesome.
And tell us how we protect the paws.
So an ointment like Vaseline is great to protect the paws from salt and other chemicals. It's quite easy to apply, just a small amount like you have on your fingers, and apply it to the big central pad or the round paw that's on the foot, and you can put a little bit on each toe. Some people worry, well, what if my dog eats it? Generally, eating a small amount of Vaseline or other ointment or lotion is not a big problem. It's ideal, though, to put this on right before you go outside. By the time you're done your walk, the Vaseline's going to have worn away.
Right. And so what do you do if this is the reaction you get? A lot of resistance or especially with those booties, like they don't want to deal with them at all.
Right. I think the important thing to remember is lots of praise, lots of treats, and lots of time. You can imagine if you were, Lance is quite a youngster, not used to things going on his foot. So the more that you can spend time with your dogs, just touching his feet, touching his ears, touching his nose, putting a sweater on inside for even just a few minutes, you want to give dogs the benefit of the doubt, and dogs want to do the right thing. So giving them praise, giving them treats, and going about things slowly really is the best way. The last thing you want is to suddenly decide in the middle of a blizzard, I'm going to put these booties on my dogs now. Dogs will often get what we call booty paralysis. My own dog does that. The first time I put them on, he just fell over on his side and refused to walk until I took the booties off. Now he's trained and he wears them and he likes them, and he knows that when he sees them, he's going outside, so he's very happy. But you have to give dogs time, and like I said, I cannot stress enough the importance of telling them that they're good, giving them time to get used to doing new things that they might be scared of. claw them off, particularly also their belly, because sometimes de-icers or salt or sand will stick to that too. So you want to get that off before they have a chance to lick it off themselves.
So what should you do if you think that your pet has ingested something they shouldn't have?
I think there are two key things that a pet owner should do. One is to call their family veterinarian if it's during normal business hours. Most vets are very well versed in which substances dogs can get into, whether it's salt or a de-icer, ethylene glycol. The other thing to do is call our poison control hotline. The ASPCA has a 24/7 hotline staffed by veterinarians who specialize in poisons and toxins, and they can tell you right away what sort of treatment you might need. Some poisons, like ethylene glycol, require immediate treatment to save your pet's life. Others are things that you'd want to address urgently, but maybe aren't quite such an emergency. I think another thing that's really helpful is for pet owners just to know where emergency hospitals are. If you have a crisis and it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, the last thing you want is to be scrambling to find an emergency hospital. I think always the best thing is to be prepared. Keep them inside. It's cold. It's dangerous. Don't let your cats go outside if you can avoid it. Obviously, having collars and microchips is very important. Sometimes cats do sneak outside. So if they get out, you want to be able to find them again. I think other things to think about is how to keep your pet safe inside the home during winter. Cats love heat. If there's a fireplace, if there's a stove burner that's on, if there is a candle, if there's an electric blanket, they're going to find it and they're going to seek it out. Every year we see cats that suffer burns, often on their tail. Sometimes they'll singe their whiskers off too from sticking their face into a flame. So if you have things like candles or a fireplace, keep a very close eye on them. Even when you think things are out of the way of cats, they're like toddlers. They have a way of getting to things that they shouldn't be getting into. Same with a radiator. Radiators can emit a tremendous amount of heat, and cats will try to get under them. They'll scooch behind it. My own cat one time actually tried to crawl into my heating system, and I had to make a little cover so that she couldn't do that. So that's always something to be aware of. You have to kind of, with cats, think proactively. Think of all the different ways that they could get in trouble, and then think about how you can prevent that from happening in the first place. The biggest trouble that cats get into outside is seeking warmth, and one of the warmest places they can sleep is in our cars. Our engines are warm, and so a lot of cats will crawl up around where the fan belt is and sleep there because it's warm, it's cozy, they're out of the wind, they're out of the snow, and out of the rain. So if you have a car that is parked outside, even in a parking garage, ideally you bang on the hood before you start the engine. That wakes the cat up, gives them time to escape before you turn the engine on. If you turn the engine on with the cat in your fan belt, it's not good for the cat.
Well, it could be a disaster, frankly.
It can be a fatal injury to the cat, and that's something that's very easy to avoid simply by banging on the hood of the car.
For more info on caring for your pet, visit ASPCA.org. And remember, if you are thinking about getting a pet, please make yours the next great rescue story. Come to the ASPCA or visit a shelter near you. I'm Susan Richard. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on All for Animals.